creeps! Andy here, and today I want to talk about the 31 movies I'm watching this month for Halloween. If you guys haven't seen my part 1 video, where have you been? Why didn't you watch it? No, I'm just kidding. If you guys haven't seen the first video of this, basically I'm just watching a new movie every single day and talking about them and ranking them. So this is my part 2, the second week. So here is my part 2. The first movie that I watched was 1932's White Zombie. This is actually on Shudder. This one had a lot of cool transitions in it. I really did enjoy some of the transitions, and some of the scenes were just really fun. There are two people that come to like this big manor. They're in, I honestly don't even remember what country they're in, but they went to visit a different country. They find that people are burying their friends and family's bodies in the center of the road so that grave robbers don't get to them. This was, I believe, the first full-length feature zombie film, and so it's really interesting to see what zombies looked like in the 30s versus what they've evolved into now. I really am a huge fan of seeing where horror started from. So, supposedly people are robbing these graves and they're turning bodies into zombies to work at a sugar mill. An American couple was invited to Mr. Beaumont's mansion. Every time I say Mr. Beaumont, it reminds me of Friends. Anyone else? Okay, sorry. Mr. Beaumont is actually in love with a woman, and so his idea is that he wants to hire a con man to kidnap her because after she goes missing for a month, the husband will just forget about her and go home. But then the con man's like, I have a better idea. Let's turn her into a zombie. And then he thinks she's dead. And then first the guy's like, I don't know if that's a good idea. And then he's like, you know what? Yeah, that's fine. They turn her into a zombie, and then he's like, oh wait, no, I liked her living. I didn't like her as a zombie. Well, yeah, you fucking killed her. But anyways, Bela Lugosi is the con man, and he is just fantastic in this movie. He's truly the best part of this film. Okay, so this one wasn't my favorite older horror film. The audio is just horrible, but I think it was worth watching just being, like I said, the first zombie film. So I ranked this one a 3.5 out of 5. The next movie that I watched was The House That Screamed. This is a 1971 Spanish horror film, and this is on Shudder. This is actually attributed to being an influence to Suspiria, and it's about a new student that arrives at a religious boarding school to see weird things take place. And at first you don't know if it's like paranormal or if the other girls that have gone missing from the boarding school are like running amok. I really like this one because it's like an evil Mary Poppins. There's really cool juxtapositions between scenes of like prayer and torture, and you really do get to see just like the mistreatment of the girls. Like they have to shower with their clothes on and be watched while they shower. In that aspect, it's pretty intense. The manner that they film at is just so fantastic. It's just, every shot is so cool. The first murder in the movie is just amazing, and with the music, the first murder and the very last scene of the film, I think are worth watching the whole film. There's a lot of red herrings in this one. You have like a group of mean girls, and you have the headmistress's like horny teenage son who's spying on the girls all the time. You have men around the property, you have maids, and you also have a man that brings wood to the manor. That's pretty funny if you end up watching the film. I won't give too much away. It's a very slow build. There's very little gore in it, but if you like more atmospheric movies with great set cinematography, lighting, everything, then I would suggest this guy. It seems like it may have been more of just an influence on Suspiria. I won't give too much away, but after you watch it, you're like, oh, this has definitely been more of an influence than one horror film. This one I gave a 5 out of 5 for the ending alone. It was really, really fun. Don't go into it thinking like, oh, I'm gonna watch a horror movie. Just go into it with an open mind, and I think that you'll hopefully enjoy it as much as I did. The next film that I watched was The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave. This is a 1972 Italian horror film, and this one was on Shudder. So there's a guy who has issues because his late wife cheated on him and then passed away, so now he likes to torture and kill redheaded women because of her. This one has subtitles, the other ones were dubbed over. This one, there's a really funny scene where somebody, I'm not gonna say who, but somebody is holding a snake and like walking up to a man with it, and where the snake's supposed to like puncture the skin, you just see the snake like flop against his face. It's really funny. That was my favorite part. But anyways, again, really cool manor, really cool grounds, really cool crypt. This one was twisty and long though, and there was some horror, but just not enough to keep me entertained for an hour and 45 minutes. This one I ended up giving a 3 out of 5. It definitely wasn't my favorite horror film, but they did have a few cool scenes, and I'm just a huge fan of being able to watch things that I've never seen before in horror films, and this definitely had some of that. Next movie I watched was Death of Me. This is a 2020 Netflix film, and it's about travelers. I believe they travel to Thailand and they watch a video where it's a couple. One of them murders the other one, and so they're trying to figure out what happened, and they kind of go back and trace their steps. It sounds like a cool concept, right? There are some good practical effects. The makeup application is really cool. There are some parts that I still don't quite understand from the movie. Like, I'm still a bit confused. It takes place in a really beautiful place. I mean, Thailand is so beautiful. So it was interesting seeing like this beautiful place try to be turned into a nightmare. There are references to its predecessor. So a lot of people compared this to The Wicker Man, which I've never seen, so I don't know. But they actually do mention The Wicker Man in the film. So it was like a bit on the nose if that's what they were trying to do. You have your cliches and horror tropes, but like that wasn't even the part of the issue for me. For me, it just seemed like they were trying to be an original film, and it started off interesting and then they just fell back on other horror films that have been made. I've said this on my channel, I'm not a big fan of like hallucination reality crossover, because you don't have any idea what's real, and then it's like, what's the point of watching that? And that's how this film was for me, because it would be like, oh, I saw this, and people would be like, no, you didn't, and then she'd be like, but I did, and they'd be like, no, you didn't, and then later they'd be like, oh, no, you did see that, but you really didn't see that. And it's just like, what is happening in this film? I don't know. Let me know if you guys have seen this one and if you felt any different than I did, but I was quite disappointed, and I gave this one a 2 out of 5. The next one that I watched was In the Tall, Tall Grass. This is a 2019 horror film, and this one is on Netflix. I hadn't seen this one even though it came out a few years ago, and I wasn't sure how an hour and 30 minutes would keep me entertained by just people running in a field. It started off really fun though, and there are 2 people who stop on the side of the road because they hear a boy, or not because, but then they hear a boy yelling in the fields to help them. They go into the fields and they are unable to leave. This one has a really fun use of a timeline. I didn't love the ending, but I did enjoy this one. I know I said that I didn't like things that are like too hallucinatory. Is that a word? But this one worked because it wasn't like, oh, is that real or is it not? I don't want to give too much away, but it didn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't matter what was happening. I don't want to give too much away. So this one did work for me, and it wasn't as annoying as like the other hallucination reality mixtures. This one is actually from a novella written by Stephen King and Joe Hill, if I'm not mistaken. But here's the thing, a lot of novellas are difficult to stretch into full-length films. For example, there was a lot of wasted time where it was just like close-ups on grass, and I think that that was a result of not having a full novel to go off of. But I think that there was enough decent scenes in the movie that it made it worth watching. I really didn't hate this one. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I enjoyed it. It wasn't the best movie I've seen. I didn't love the ending, but I still thought it was like a fun concept, and it kept me more entertained than I thought it would. The next movie that I watched was His House. This is a 2020 film on Netflix. This is about asylum seekers who make their way to Europe. They start experiencing strange occurrences in the house that they're living in, and so you're kind of left thinking like, is this house haunted? Are they suffering from like PTSD or survivor's guilt? Or have they brought their urban legends from their hometown with them? So it's a couple, a man and a woman, and he is trying to adjust by forgetting his past, and she is kind of resisting adjusting by holding on to the past. And so it's interesting, just the 2 perspectives and the way that they go about this new life. But man, what a heavy movie. It discusses topics of race and refugees and people fleeing terrible situations and fight for survival and assimilation. I mean, there's a lot going on here, and this is definitely a social commentary. And a lot of people do enjoy horror that's mixed with social commentary, and a lot of people don't, so it's really up to you. But the ending of this one, fuck man, I gave this a 5 out of 5 because I do love social commentary horror movies, and this one was just, it really gets to you. This is a tough movie to watch, so I gave it a 5 out of 5 because it definitely evoked some emotion for me, and I did enjoy seeing it. I really liked the metaphor of the things that were going on, and it wasn't just a sit back and watch type movie. It was, you had to do a little work. You had to dig a little bit for yourselves. I really enjoyed this movie. The next movie that I watched, There's Something Inside Your House. This is a 2021 horror film on Netflix, and this one, I had a feeling going into it that it was just going to be a terrible slasher, and that's exactly what I wanted, and it did not disappoint. So it had some fun kills in this movie, but that's kind of all I can say about it. It's about a school whose students have their secrets shared, and then they're killed off by a killer wearing a mask of their face. There's a quote that I found online that I think perfectly explains this. It says, in trying to have it both ways, Bryce has created a messy, overstuffed parody of moral policing that squanders the promise of its clever, executed opening. I thought that was the perfect comment for this movie. It really tries to be a social commentary but doesn't quite make the connections, and then it tries to be a slasher film, but then it also tries to have some meaning, and it just, nothing quite adds up in this film. It just didn't bring anything original, and some of the things that happened in the movie, I was like, what is going on? However, it did not disappoint. It was exactly what I wanted to watch at the time, so I gave this one a 3 out of 5. If you just want like a mindless slasher movie, throw this one on, why not? The next movie that I watched was The Evil Eye. This is a 1962 Italian horror film by Mario Bava, and this is on Shudder. This, however, was my least favorite of the Mario Bava films that I have seen. It's a bit more comical than the other ones. It's about a woman who goes to visit a woman that she hardly knows in Rome, and then the night she gets there, the woman ends up dying, and then there's a big storm, so she can't call anybody, and so she walks to the hospital instead, but then she gets mugged, and then after she gets mugged, she witnesses a murder, and it's like, geez, slow down, what is going on? So a pretty eventful night for her. Nobody believes her, and then there's like kind of a fun murder mystery, but the plot is just so nutty that I couldn't like fully get into it, but it did kind of remind me of like a Alfred Hitchcock murder mystery type movie, like a Rear Window type movie. So it was fun, but definitely not my favorite. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. It was fun to watch, but it wasn't the best Mario Bava film. So those are the films that I have watched this week. Let me know if you guys have seen these and how you feel about them, but then also let me know the horror films that you have watched. I hope you guys are having a great October and enjoying watching horror films that are new that you guys haven't seen, because I think that this is just a fun way to celebrate the holiday. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you of course tomorrow with another horror film. What am I, a fucking director? No, video. Bye guys.